Welcome, friends. My name is Avinash Gorakshekar, and I welcome all of you again to another interesting episode of Konexio HighFlyers. Friends, as all of you are aware, these episodes help us understand emerging companies from emerging sectors in a much better way. We get to speak to the promoters and the top managements of such companies, and which helps us understand, the company's business model, their growth journey, their future growth plans. And in this process, all our investors, can take a very conscious investment call when they do invest in such companies. And friends, today we got another interesting company which is going to hit the capital market very soon. The company's name is YAAP Digital Limited, and I have the privilege of having Dr. Atul Hegde, who's the chairman and managing director of the company. Atulji, it's a pleasure for me to host you, and thank you very much for your time for giving us today.
Thank you so much. Really looking forward to have this interaction with you. I've been watching your previous episodes. So quite excited to be part of this. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah. So Atulji, first elementary question, which is very basic and which all our investors would like to know from you. How did this business journey start? Like, is it a first generation effort? How did you hit upon the idea to get into this business? And what is the present positioning of our company in the domestic advertising services market? In a summary, if you could tell us, how was your journey like? How did you start? And typically, what is the positioning currently in the domestic market for us as of now? So if you could
Sure.
please start.
Sure. So yes, it is a first generation company. I come from a very strong advertising and marketing, digital marketing background. I was part of India's first digital marketing company almost 2 decades back when digital marketing had not even started in the country. Worked with large multinationals, across India, handle markets in the Middle East, Southeast Asia. 10 years back is when I decided that it's time to become an entrepreneur. And, I saw this huge gap that digital advertising, digital marketing was growing. People were just about starting to leverage technology. Google, Facebook had become dominant in India, and there were lots of players who were offering digital marketing services, but very few players who were actually using tech, analytics, data and creative together. So either they were only creative or they were only tech. There were very few people who were marrying this together, and having spent almost 2 decades in advertising marketing and seeing the trend change, and move towards digital, I thought it was a good time to become an entrepreneur and start something in this space. And that's how the entire journey for YAAP began.
Okay.
So I keep telling clients that, we are a startup and a startup mindset, but we are not upstarts. Each of us in my company, we have spent two decades in building brands across mediums. So that's how really the journey of YAAP began. And
Okay.
in terms of how we differentiate ourselves, as I said, very few companies that do tech, data, creative together in the digital marketing domain. We are a pure digital first marketing company. And that's really our differentiation, what we were able to offer to brands.
Okay. Understood. I think thank you for the answer, Atulji. Atulji, now tell us in a very simple way, what are the kind of services we offer? Because I was seeing your prospectus. I think apart from private, even government agencies are your clients. Sir, what are the kind of typically digital campaigns which you do for your clients? If you could explain in a very simple way, and geographically, are we located pan India? If you could tell us, what is your marketing network, your distribution network, some
Sure.
inputs on that, if you could tell us.
Sure. So very simply put, today if a brand wants to reach their consumer on the digital medium, is where we help them. So we help with all kinds of digital marketing. We have 3 lines of business, what we call as 3Ds: design, discovery, distribution. Design is any form of design. So we can design a YouTube show for them, like how you have, or we can design a website, we can design a UI UX mobile app for them. So anything, any form of design, we can help with that. We can create content. Then we help them with, once you've created the content, how do people discover it? So influencer marketing is something we started almost about 4.5, 5 years ago, where we help brands work with content creators, with influencers to talk about their brand. So that's the second part. The third part, we help large brands advertise on digital mediums. So today you want to advertise on Google, you want to advertise on Instagram, you want to advertise on Facebook, LinkedIn, so that's where we come in and we help brands do that. So any form of digital marketing that you would need, YAAP is your partner for that. For a young company, we are spread right across. So we are in Gurgaon, we are in Noida, so two offices there. I am based in Bombay. We have a Bombay office. We have an office in Shillong because we have clients in the Northeast that we look after. We have a client. We have an office in Hyderabad because Hyderabad is the global backend for Google. So there's very good talent pool available, for our performance marketing business, for our media business.
Okay.
Then we have expanded. We acquired a company in Singapore, which is into programmatic media about 6-7 years back. So we are present there. In the last 6 years, we expanded to Dubai. So in UAE, we are present in Dubai. So yeah, so pretty much across India and Middle East and Southeast Asia.
Okay. No, fine. Understood. Atulji, now in terms of services, if you could give us a slight kind of idea or background, what were the prominent campaigns which have been done by us? Any campaign which you think has been very special for our company, and in terms of order size also it was quite significant. If you could tell us
Yes.
something from your memories.
Absolutely. So multiple campaigns. What we are really proud of. We were the agency that launched Startup India. It was a big initiative, and it was we were a startup at that point of time. So everything that you saw in the digital domain in the early days for Startup India. Then we were also the agency that launched UPI. We were the agency for UPI from day zero. I'm talking about just pre-COVID when people didn't even know what UPI was, and today
Correct.
you cannot live without that product. Right, so we've seen the journey from a few hundred transactions to billion transactions of UPI. Similarly, we worked with RuPay. Then we also worked with state government. So for Assam tourism, we ran a 3-year campaign for them. And Assam's challenge was that in India, tourism is either Kerala, Rajasthan, Goa, Madhya Pradesh. They have big budgets. Nobody wants to go to the Northeast. I'm talking about 6, 7, 8 years back. So we had a global campaign with Priyanka Chopra, which we ran for them. We repositioned Assam, highly successful, ran it globally across the world. So that again is a very memorable campaign. Dubai Tourism, we have lots of Indians who keep going to Dubai. We are the only Indian agency that works with Dubai Tourism for almost now 7 years. And the most famous property that Dubai Tourism has is the world's largest tourism brand, by the way, is something called Dubai Shopping Festival. Almost every Indian has gone and attended Dubai Shopping Festival. So that entire marketing for Dubai Shopping Festival for influencer marketing side is done by YAAP. So yeah, so there are multiple recently very memorable campaign for the Adani Group. They have a very large Dharavi development coming here. So we did a beautiful Children's Day campaign for them. Del Monte again, in the FMCG space, where we're talking to kids. We did a great campaign for them in the chocolate syrup space. So yeah, so it's across clients, across brands that we have had some very memorable campaigns in the last 8, 9 years.
Okay. Well, very nice to know, Atulji. Atulji, now tell me one thing. Out of our total revenue mix, one data point which I would like you to tell our viewers is that how much is private and how much is government business? Like, what is the current mix currently at?
So private is almost about 60-65%
Okay.
of our business because NPCI is a big client for us, but I take that as quasi government because it's actually a JV between 13 private banks and the RBI, so it's not typically a government organization.
Okay.
And and then government would be about, I would say, about 30-35%.
Okay.
Like Dubai Tourism is government, but it's it's run like a private, but we take it as government.
Okay. No, understood. And Atulji, just one more data point, like typically in our business, is there a large repeat business from existing clients? Does it happen in our business?
Yes, so organic is the best and the most efficient way to grow. If you look at YAP's numbers, right, last year we were almost at about 155 crores of top line with almost 11 crore plus of PAT. And for that size in our business, you would need at least about 350 odd people. We are only about 110, 120,
Okay.
right? And the reason for that is repeat clients.
Okay.
So for, average age of the company is about 9.5 years. Average age of the client with us is about 5 years plus.
Okay.
So we've seen that clients, the stickiness of a client is what actually makes you more profitable, and you can service the same clients with less number of people.
Okay. No, no, I think nice to know. Atulji, now just tell us some idea about this 152 or 155 crores top line which you mentioned. Sir, how many active clients have we serviced in the say last 12, 15 months? What is the total active customer base? And secondly, I want to understand that in our business, it's finally the relationship you enjoy with your client, the kind of stickiness you enjoy, the kind of creativity you help the client. Sir, how does pricing work? Like, is it negotiated on a customized basis, or there's a standard rack rate, which you offer to clients? How does it work?
So good. So let me tell you the price. Let me answer the pricing part first, right? Since we have three kinds of services, the three Ds, some price. So for in design, everything is a fixed project fee. So the client would come to us a problem, say, okay, can you help me design X, Y, Z, and we would give them a project fee for that. That's a very customized way to do it. Everything in the influencer marketing, which is the discovery, and distribution, which is media buy, is a fee structure. So it's a fee of the number of spends that you do. The fee, depending on how customized the service is and how much tech plays there and how much analysts we need to put on the job, the fees can range anywhere from 7.5% to 20%, right? So that's a fee structure. So two models. One is a project structure, which is a fixed fee that we worked on. The fixed fee could be for a project or it could be for an annual retainer. And the other would be a fixed fee model, which is a percentage, which is like a commission model that we work on.
Correct.
So these are the two pricing models that we work on. Because we work with mostly larger clients, because we work, with larger mandates, we have positioned ourselves as in the more premium end of the market, not so much mass, because it helps us do two things. A, it helps us attract better talent. It helps us invest in better tech and data. And these two are really the stickiness factor in our business, right? Can you give great people to service, and do you have great tech and data? Hence, the client is so stick with you because they know that you have all the data with them and you are partnered with them in their growth journey. So
Correct.
that is really the way the stickiness works for us in our business.
Okay. Atulji, now one thing which is very important, you said there's a lot of stickiness, a lot of repeat business by the customers because of our good quality service. But one thing what I've observed, please correct me if I'm wrong, is that there's a large amount of concentration from the top 10 customers. Almost 87 to 90% comes from these top 10 customers. So could we say that because a lot of repeat business comes from them, that we continue to be patronized by them? And going ahead in future, Atulji, how do you plan to actually de-risk this, this situation? I mean, obviously 10 clients giving you business is good, but if you diversify to say 25, 30, 40 clients, that actually reduces your risk. So anything on that is the company planning?
So you very rightly pointed out, the stickiness comes from the fact that clients grow with you and you grow with them, and that model will continue, right? So if today we have 10 clients that is contributing to 75% of the business, that might move to about 15 or 18. It will not move to 100, because we do not want to service, a large number of clients who have a small wallet share with us, because
Correct.
that is not efficient in our business. My efficiency only grows when I have the same team working on the brands for a period of time. And then how do I scale up with them? And also coming in at the right time for the brand. Like the Adani Group, we started working with them about 18 months back with the Dharavi project. Within 6 months, they brought us into the Adani ports. Within 3 months of that, they got us into Adani Foundation. Now with a large Indian homegrown group, we see that in the next 5 years, if we are really able to focus on it, but when it gets reported as Adani. But in fact, there are multiple companies within that.
Correct. No,
So
understood.
that's
I think
really
so.
going to be our space.
Yeah, so I think it's a good strategy. You continue with the large growing
Yes.
customers, so obviously their growth gets rubbed off on your financials, and you get the the slice of growth. Tell me one thing, Atulji, on a very macro level, what's the kind of opportunity which is available, the total addressable market for digital advertising market in India over the next say 3-5 years? Because this is a technology kind of a driven kind of business. You need the right technology, you need the right kind of people. Over the next 3-5 years, what is the size of the market you think we could be looking at, and how is our company going to capitalize on that growth? If you could please share your thoughts.
Great question, and this is something that I'm extremely bullish about. So the advertising category in India is almost 125,000 crores, out of which almost 55 to 58% spends is on digital. So we are talking about a 65,000 crore market. But there is one data which stands out and which is very unique to India. And I think that is going to change, and that's why companies like us, entrepreneurs like us, companies like YAAP are going to benefit. 92% of all Indian advertising is controlled by four international players. Okay, it's controlled by WPP, it's controlled by IPG, it's controlled by Dentsu, it's controlled by Publicis and Havas. So these are American, British, French, and Japanese. No sector in India has such dominance of foreign players. You look at across sectors, right? And now I feel that there is a whole wave. And why did this happen? I'll tell you why this happened. For the last 100 years, if you are a large Japanese company and you went into any country, you mandated that your brand will only work with a Japanese agency. So when Toyota went all over the world, they worked only with a Japanese agency. When Suzuki went all over the world, they only worked with a Japanese agency. If you're an American brand, you're a Coke or a Pepsi or a McDonald's, wherever in the world you went, you only worked with American companies. If you're a Korean brand, when Hyundai came into India 25 years back, they mandated they only work with a Korean agency. So they started a Korean agency in India. Indian brands have still not done. Some of our largest brands still work with international networks, but that is changing. Look at our own example. Adani Group used to work with large companies. Now, as they become bigger, they are open to working with Indian companies like ours. Indian brands are becoming bigger and growing global. Look at the kinds of NPCI, look at the Tata Group, there are so many now. So I feel that as Indian companies grow, also now the whole nation, there is this whole pride of working with Indian brands, right? I mean, if the home minister of the country can say that he's moved on from Google to Zoho, and the whole idea is to encourage Indian businesses. So I think that is going to be the biggest benefit for Indian companies like us. And it happens in other sectors. If you look at the defense sector, for example, when the government is procuring, there is a large mandate for Indian companies. Today, the Indian government is the #1 spender on digital advertising. I don't see the day far away where they will mandate that they will spend through Indian companies. And that's where there are very few independents like ours who have, who are growing, who are now going to hit the capital market, who list, where large companies would want to engage with you. So that I feel is a huge opportunity for us. And for, it's taken us 9.5 years to reach where we are. The next 5 years and another 5 years from that is completely going to define this game, because we feel that now the sector, tailwinds are behind us.
Okay. No, fine. I think understood. Atulji, now tell me one thing. This is something which is very relevant for the investor and for you as a company. You plan to take over a company from the IPO proceeds. The company's name is Gozoop Online Private Limited. We just want to understand, sir, what is the profile of this company? Who are the earlier owners? And what is the strategic, direction and vision for you to take over? What value accretion will happen to ZAP, when you take over this company? If you could please tell us.
So the reason to acquire Gozoop, a well-established company, been around for 15, 16 years, great founders, Ahmed and Rohan, who have been, they founded this company in their early 20s and grew this company, continue to be as part of the business. So for us, they do two things. They have two lines of services. The first is they create content. So that aligns with our design, the 3Ds that I spoke to you about. 50% of their business comes from a service called Hawk. Hawk is basically a AI-led social monitoring, service. So what it does is actually monitors what people are talking about brands. Is there any backlash? Is there any positive? It's a very, very sticky business. 50% of their revenues come from their large enterprises use them, right? And they do not have influencer marketing and media services that YAAP has. So for us, it does two things. A, it gives us deeper into existing services because they have a blue chip portfolio of clients. And two of our biggest services, fastest growing services, which is media and influencer marketing, they don't have. So there's a huge opportunity to cross sell. So that's primarily the reason to acquire a company like Gozoop.
Okay. And tell us one thing, sir. Typically, will this company be kept as a standalone unit, or will this be merged finally with the company? Any thoughts on that, sir?
So early days, I am always a believer that you need to give some time before you force fit mergers. It's easy to buy. It's very difficult to integrate because it's people business. Its cultures have to integrate. So I wouldn't take that call, at least not for the next 18 months, till we completely get a sense of where we are moving. And then those options are always open up. But yes, it will be part of the YAAP group. So,
Okay.
but it will retain its identity as Gozoop. It's just that now it will be part of a larger entity.
In terms of the shareholding, Atulji, this will be 100% subsidiary of our company, right?
So it's a creeping acquisition. So within 3 years, so in the first lot with the IPO proceeds, we are buying 60%, and the next
Okay.
40% gets acquired in the next 24 months.
Okay, understood. Fine. And just to give you a profile, what are the kind of customers they deal with? If we could get some idea, because the prospectus has given the financial numbers. They have made a PAT of roughly 6 crores last year. But typically, what are the kind of customers? Is it a complementary kind of buyout for you, like customers which you cater, Gozoop does not cater, and what you cater, they cater.
Yes.
So
So
is it
we have,
something like?
yes, absolutely. We have less than 1% overlap of customers between us. So they work with large enterprises like Geo, whom we have still not started working with. They work with a lot of startup space in retail space. Retail is something that YAP doesn't do, because we have been focusing on larger ticket. We are focusing on the mid market kind of brands. Even on financial brands, there's great complementary, because we have a lot of experience in BFSI, but the brands we don't work with, they are part of it. So they
Okay.
work with, media and entertainment, they work with the Netflixes of the world. In the travel space, they work with the Clear Trips of the world. So there is actually less than 1% client overlap, which is again
Okay.
very important when you look at acquisitions.
Okay. No, understood. Atulji, now coming to the main, bread and butter business what we run on a standalone basis. Tell me, sir, does our industry or our company work on a order book kind of basis, or do we get rolling business orders? How does this business work? Like, do you
Yes.
have an
So
order book, or do you have a rolling business
no.
kind of,
So this, yes,
inquiries
so
which
it's
keep coming in?
yeah. So this doesn't work on an order book basis. We know that if a brand spent $100 in year one, typically they will have a 15 to 20% bump in budgets, unless it's been a very bad year for them. So typically, what we get engaged is the creative services, where they pay us a fees, is like an order book, so that you sign. Since media and influencer marketing, everything is commission based, that's not an order book. That goes from quarter to quarter planning on what the marketing needs are. So
Okay.
that's the two models that we work with.
Okay. Now, understood. Sir, now just again to reiterate the fact that since a majority of a portion of our business comes from repeat business, sir, tell me in your own words, since you have been in the industry for a very long time, you know the industry, working better. Sir, what are the qualitative positives of our company? Like, in what way are we doing things slightly better that we get a large chunk of the repeat business? Any two, three qualitative point which you could tell us? I mean, of course, one is the service, one is the creativity, but anything else which you add value to the customer, which makes them come back to us again and again.
I think there's a lot of use of tech, data, and analytics, which gives you deeper insights. We have built our own tools, most of them now powered by AI, whether it's for influencer marketing, whether it's for media. So, deeper insights is something that all customers are always looking for, right? Brand insights, consumer insights. So, that I would say is one big differentiator. The second big differentiator is that, as a company from day one, we don't try and do 20 things because they all seem to be attractive. We have always been in these three lines of businesses, the three Ds, design, discovery, and distribution, and we just go deeper and deeper in that. So that helps us focus. So even from our side, people have got experience just in these three services, because it's very easy in marketing to try and do everything for a client, that we will do
Right.
events also for you, we'll do PR also for you, we will do this also for you. We don't get into that trap. So that way we are very conservative, saying that let's just do what we understand best. So I
Okay.
would say that these are the two things that are the real differentiator. And then case to case, brand to brand, it depends. Sometimes it's a people factor, sometimes it's about a success factor. Sometimes when you're with brands for a lot of time, it's just good energy being together, and they do not want to, change the partner because it's doing well. So there are multiple things that happen.
No, no, I think understood. Sir, now tell me, I was also observing one important data point in your prospectus, like a large percentage of business comes from the BFSI segment. So trend going to continue for the next say 2 to 3 years, or are you looking at other segments like FMCG or manufacturing, or typically, new growth areas like electric
Yes.
vehicles? Obviously the runway for you is very large. So can we expect that the percentage of BFSI could gradually reduce in the coming say two
Yes.
to three years?
So two things will happen. So the overall business from BFSI will grow, but the percentage share will degrow because we now have FMCG kicking in. We now have corporate brands like Adani kicking in. We now have a lot of larger startups that have come in. But you have to also understand that BFSI is among the top three spending categories for the entire industry. They are the early adopters of digital, right? So while the overall BFSI pie will grow for us, the share over the next 3 years, I think, will be half of what it currently is.
Okay. So fine. One more thing, Atulji, which I want to ask you is that who could be the rightful peer to us, because we are a large digital player, digital advertising player. We have seen a lot of players like RK Swami or that Crayon Advertising. A lot of companies getting listed on the markets. Which company you think is a closer comparable to us in terms of peers? If you could please tell us.
So that's the biggest challenge. There is no listed peer, right? I think in the next 2 years, you will see 15 such companies getting listed. But right now for YAAP, there is no clear peer because no digital companies which are tech-led and creative together have got listed. Plus, in the overall segment, if I say today, there will not be a handful of about 25, 30 companies like us anyway in the business. And that's the
Okay.
real differential. So we do not have a real peer. For each of our business lines, we have different competitors, right?
Okay.
Most of the companies that have got listed so far, they get loosely categorized as advertising, and hence
Okay.
they get put together. But most of them, in fact, both the names that you have taken are actually in the offline advertising space. They do TV, print, the smaller share of this. Pure
Okay.
blue blood digital marketing companies which are tech led are not yet listed.
Okay.
So there is actually no clear peer for us, and that has always
Understood.
been a challenge.
Okay. Now let's come to the financials. Atulji, I think very strong numbers as you mentioned in FY25. We've got a number of almost 152 crores compared to 113 crores, and your PAT has multiplied significantly. It's almost 11.39 crores from 2.5 crores. So first of all, Atulji, tell me what exactly happened in this year. Your revenue growth has been solid, but profit growth has been quite excellent. Almost multiplying 3 to 4 times. So any specific reason why the profitability took off this sharply?
So there are two, three things. A, we have always been, hiring for the future. So we made a big bet about 2 years back. We got the right kind of senior talent. Now all of that takes time to kick in, which is why if you see the efforts that we got, the results that we got last year was primarily because of the investments that were made 2 years before. Also, we had acquired a company in Dubai. Okay, it was a loss-making company which we had acquired. We have now completely turned it around. So that has been a big reason for us to significantly increase our PAT. But other than that, newer clients, existing clients growing would be the third reason that I would attribute it. But majority was capacity building. So 2 years back, we took a call that let's hire the best of industry talent, give them a runway to grow, and we know that it will show fruit. In fact, now when we come out with our March numbers, whatever those numbers are, you will
Yeah.
actually see that our workforce would not have grown more than 10% because
Okay.
we made those investments 2 years back. So our capacity for business has been enlarged.
Okay. I think Atulji, one small request. I think we have got data points till month of March 25. Now we are already in the month of February. If you could share some basic numbers, like till now, till say December, if it's possible for you, if you could tell us, what has been the kind of revenue, the PAT, which will give us a
Yes.
better perspective for investors.
Yes. So two things that I need to first call out is that the Indian advertising business is typically an H2 business because advertising business picks up from Diwali and peaks at IPL. So it's typically an H2 business. Since we are very BFSI focused, 65% of our business comes in Q4.
Okay.
Okay, and if you look at our last 3 years data, you will see
Yeah.
that. I think December we should be closing at about almost, I would say, top line would be anywhere between 88 to 91, 92 crores, and bottom line would be 8 crores, 9 crores plus. So
Okay.
we are
Fine. So
always,
this.
so we have always, we have increased our efficiency. So from last year, if you see, I think this year we should be around 10, between 9.5 to 11% PAT kind of
Okay.
a numbers. And Q4 is typically our biggest quarter.
Okay.
That's really the blockbuster quarter where 60% of our business comes from there.
Well, I think
So
point
that,
taken.
so yeah,
So
so
I think
that's
both
really going to be helpful.
is solid. I think very nice to know that. Atulji, now let's come to the most important question for today's interview. We are going public, so it's a big credibility achievement for you personally. You will be going public. So tell us, what is the main objective of raising money, and where is this? How much money is the company planning to raise from the capital market?
Yeah. So overall, I think it will be about a 80 to 85 crore issue. The final numbers are yet to be this.
Yeah.
Primary of that is the Gozoop acquisition. Okay, so I think almost about 30 odd crores will go into that. So that's the big chunk why we are doing. We are then setting up a AI studio. So that's again something, because most of our content now is powered by AI. So that's again something that's going to be extremely crucial as we go ahead. Other than that, we have an unidentified acquisition for which, I mean, it's part of the overall other corporate expenses that we are looking at. And then working capital, I think, is about 5-6 crores, which is there. We feel that, the first 10 years has really been a trailer for us. We have another 10 years to build this company. There is no OFS, none of that. Everything that we want to raise, we want to either acquire assets or we want to deploy into getting better tech or better upskilling of our people.
Okay. No, understood. Atulji, now one important question which investors would like to know from you. We find that the promoter groups has got several private companies, which are into different businesses, real estate, food business, you've got aerospace. Now, just wanted to understand that, when the promoter group has so many companies, our focus, I believe, will be on the advertising, digital advertising business. But are these companies just companies which have been created in the past? What will be the future roadmap for these companies? Because 2022 companies have been outlined in the prospectus. Your personal view, like what is the main strategic objective of having so many companies in different sectors? If you could please tell us.
So basically, promoters are three of us, which is me, Sudhir Menon, and Subodh Menon. I am completely the one who runs YAAP. Sudhir is our overall strategic mentor.
Correct.
Subodh is a promoter, is not involved. Sudhir and Subodh are first generation entrepreneurs who have built a very large business on their own, which is in the specialty chemical space called Dove Kettle.
Okay.
Right. In fact, Dove Kettle got a 5,000 crore IPO approval about 5-6 months back. So that's a very large business. So all these promoter companies are actually in that bucket,
Okay.
right? Whereas my 100% focus is really about YAAP. So
Okay.
that's really to answer your question. So we
No,
are
I think that is.
fortunate that we have such a strong promoter group that helps us to have financial discipline. Gives us the financial might. We never have working capital issues, things like that. And at the same time, my focus 100% is with this company.
No, I think understood. Very nicely mentioned by you. Thank you for that. Atulji, one small question, because I was reading the prospectus. I think we have got some business interests with a company called Crayon Advertising. Some loans are payable to them. So, in what way are we associated with Crayon Advertising?
So there's no loan payable. I think it will be a publisher payable. So as I said, they do offline advertising. So when a client of ours wants to do a print ad, wants to do a TV ad, then that business is done by Crayons, because we don't do that. We are focused on digital.
Okay.
So tomorrow if an Adani comes or an NPCA comes here, Times of India make ad nikal do, that is what they would do. So as
Okay.
part of that business, there would be a payable to them. It's not a loan.
Acha, no, understood. So basically, it's like a arrangement
Yeah,
with
it's like a vendor.
Crayon
Yes,
Advertising.
absolutely.
Okay. Okay. Now, Atulji, now since you mentioned that you all are 3 or 4 promoter member team, I want to understand functionally what is the main role you play in the company. Like when you say you are 100% into digital advertising, is your main focus getting new clients, nurturing existing relationships? What exactly is your functional role in the company?
Yes, my role is really about that, which is two things. A, key customer engagement. B, expansion, possible acquisitions. Expansion are two ways, which is new customers. How can I go and I've spent almost now 25, 27 years in the industry, so the network is very large, clients recognize me. So how can I leverage that for YAP? And other than that, inorganic growth. See, we have a company that is going to be focused on organic, inorganic both. Right? So inorganic growth in our business, the biggest challenge is how do you get a founder excited to work with you? And that's primarily my role, to go and hunt for the best of companies and then motivate those founders to be with us. See, very rarely do we go and buy out a company 100%. We want those founders to work with us, and we do a creeping acquisition. So the
Correct.
risk is much less, and the founder is then understands our way of working. So my role is pretty much that. So both are growth areas. One is in the organic and second in the inorganic space. But
Okay.
what we've really done is the team that we have built. So our senior team is the same from day zero. And that is again one of the reasons why the company is successful with so little people. And they pretty much run the 3 Ds. So there is somebody who's responsible for each of those Ds.
Okay. Well, I think very nice to hear that everybody has got their role cut out, and that's the way the company goes.
Yes.
Atulji, last question now. We all know that there is a risk in every business, but if you leave alone COVID, normally what is the most important risk which, according to you, is important to ensure that we run the ship 24/7 in a very smooth manner? And what's the first thing which you keep in mind when you come to office every day? If you could please tell us.
So I'm glad you mentioned COVID. So I'll give you a context. So first I will give you the risk for the advertising sector. Whenever there is a downtrend, okay, whenever there is down, the first budgets that get cut is advertising budgets.
Correct.
Whenever there is a crisis, this is what happened during COVID. But here also digital benefited. The biggest growth for digital advertising happened during COVID, because you could no longer put print ads, you could no longer put outdoor, nobody was going out, you could no longer go and shoot for television films. That's when influencer marketing grew. That's when digital marketing grew. If you see the consumption, we were all sitting at home and consuming digital.
Correct.
That's when YouTube grew. You are on YouTube, you know about it. So digital actually, bucks that trend that when there is a downturn, people cut on advertising budgets because they put it from those mediums, they put into digital. So it's a risk as well as an opportunity. And for us, we saw that growth during COVID. So that's important. The second thing is so if you see, I kept on saying that we have 3 things and we keep doing that. But at the same time, you will have to evolve with those 3 things. Like you have to keep your eyes on trends, right? Because marketing trends keep changing. So we jumped onto the influencer marketing trend 5 years back when it was just a hype. Now it's become a proper industry. Almost 4,000-5,000 crores goes into influencer marketing in India. Now AI, okay, use of AI to make content, use of AI in generative AI, right, is again going to be very big in our industry. So how do we adopt these things earlier is what is the first thing I think of when I walk into an office, that how do I leverage tech for bettering our current business? And that's really what we want to do in the next 24 months.
Okay, fine. Anyway, I think Atulji, it was my pleasure to host you, and we had a lovely interview. I think a lot of good information you shared. All our viewers will benefit. So, sir, please accept my best wishes to you, your entire management team, and best wishes for your forthcoming IP also. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for such a positive interview. I really look forward to meeting you in person someday soon.
Yeah. Thank you, definitely, sir. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.